Okay, so I want you to imagine for a second that you're a real estate developer.
All right, I'm with you.
And you hire this crew of incredibly fast, just hyper-efficient robotic builders to construct a massive skyscraper right in the middle of downtown.
Sounds like a pretty great deal so far.
Right. So you hand them the plans, you leave for the weekend, and when you come back on Monday, the building is completely finished.
Wow. Just like that.
Just like that. It's gleaming, the glass is perfect, the structure is massive, but then...
Well, yes, the city inspector shows up.
Exactly. The city inspector arrives, and they ask to see the electrical blueprints, the welding certificates, the load-bearing calculations.
The important stuff.
Yeah. And your robot crew just looks at the inspector, shrugs, and says, oh, it looks good. We think the test's passed.
Yeah, that is a terrifying prospect.
Right.
I mean, you have this incredibly complex monolithic structure that people are actually going to rely on, but you have absolutely zero proof of how it was put together beneath the surface.
None at all.
And if you don't know how the foundation was poured, well, you just can't trust the building.
Exactly. And, if something breaks on the 40th floor, you have no idea where to even start looking.
Right.
Now, the crazy thing is that scenario isn't science fiction. It is happening right now, today, on, thousands of software engineering teams around the world.
Because the robotic crew is AI.
Yes, exactly. So today we are looking at a deep stack of technical guides, compliance briefs, and strategic playbooks, all centered around one platform.
A platform that's really trying to solve this exact chaos in the software world.
Right, and that platform is called FRAIM.
Which is just incredibly relevant for anyone touching code today, really.
Oh, absolutely.
Because the explosion of AI coding assistants is mirroring your construction metaphor perfectly. They are astonishingly fast. But the oversight...
The actual proof of the process.
Yes, the proof of process is practically non-existent right now.
So, if you are listening to this right now and you are trying to figure out how to safely scale AI in your organization without, losing your mind...
Or degrading your code base.
Right. Or failing your compliance audits, then this deep dive is definitely for you.
Yeah, whether you are a solo founder in a garage or running a massive enterprise engineering team.
We are going to figure out how FRAIM takes the absolute wild west of AI-assisted engineering and transforms it into a structured, auditable workflow.
Yeah, it's a huge shift.
Okay, let's unpack this. We have this vague industry-wide promise of AI coding assistants making everyone 10 times faster.
Right, that's the pitch.
But let's look at the messy reality. What actually happens when developers use these tools at scale?
Well, what happens is the creation of a massive black box.
Okay, explain that.
So let's look at a standard developer's day right now. They're using raw models, right? Tools like Claude, Copilot, or Cursor.
Yeah, the usual suspects.
Exactly. So they type a prompt, the AI spits out a massive block of really complex code, and the engineer, they glide their eyes over it for maybe 3 seconds.
If that.
Right. And they say, looks good to me. And they hit accept.
Look, I'm definitely guilty of the 3-second skim. I'll admit it.
I mean, we all are. It's human nature.
Yeah.
But from an organizational standpoint,
yeah,
that is a nightmare.
Because there's no record.
Exactly. There was no record of what was generated by the AI versus what was human written. There's no proof that the output was rigorously reviewed before being deployed into the live product. And most importantly, there's no evidence that the company's standard operating procedures, their SOPs for how software should be built, were actually followed.
You're literally just relying entirely on the developer's vibes at that point. It's pure trust.
And trust is not an engineering metric.
Wow. Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
This invisible workflow creates this massive audit gap. When the time comes, the organization simply cannot demonstrate that this AI-assisted work met the same strict governance standards as, traditional human-only development.
It's just code arriving out of thin air.
Basically, yeah.
Which brings us to the source material for today. These documents make it very clear what FRAIM actually is, and maybe more importantly, what it isn't.
That's a crucial distinction.
Right, because FRAIM is not another code-generating model. It's not trying to compete with OpenAI or Anthropic.
No, not at all. It is an AI management platform. It acts as an orchestration and telemetry layer.
So how does that actually work in practice?
Think of it as sitting perfectly between the engineer and the AI agent. The AI model is still the engine processing the code.
Okay, the AI is still doing the heavy lifting.
Exactly. But FRAIM manages the process around that engine. It dictates what work happens, in what order, and under what conditions.
And the anatomy of how it does this is really clever. In the Frame ecosystem, you don't just open a blank chat window and start throwing free-form, chaotic prompts at an AI.
Right. No more open-ended chat.
Instead, you execute very specific jobs. A job is their primary unit of work, something like feature implementation or technical design.
And within those jobs, the work is broken down even further into phases.
Like steps?
Yeah, but they're mandatory gates. The AI must pass through them sequentially. It cannot skip a phase just because it thinks it already knows the answer.
Oh, that's smart.
Then you have skills, which are reusable pieces of execution guidance, like teaching the AI exactly how your specific database works.
Okay, got it.
And finally, you have rules, which are always on constraints. For example, a rule might be, never leave a password hard-coded in plain text.
So the best way I can picture this in my head using raw AI right now is like hiring a brilliant, incredibly fast, but totally chaotic freelancer who absolutely refuses to document a single thing they do.
Yes, that's exactly it.
But using Frame is like giving that chaotic freelancer a very strict, no-nonsense project manager.
The sources actually call this the AI mentor.
The AI mentor, I love that. So this mentor forces the agent to stop, explain what phase they're in, and provide concrete evidence before they are allowed to move to the next step.
And that concept of evidence is the linchpin of the whole system.
Right. But I have to ask, if the AI mentor stops the agent from skipping steps, what does evidence actually look like?
That's the big question.
Because an AI hallucinating is still an AI. It could just lie to the mentor and say, yep, I ran the tests, everything is perfect.
And that is exactly where the orchestration layer shows its teeth. In Frame, evidence is not commentary.
Okay.
Evidence is not the AI saying, I think it works. Strong evidence is inspectable, verifiable proof from the environment itself.
Like what specifically?
It is passing terminal commands. It's specific file paths, generated artifacts, screenshots, issue links, or explicitly documented open questions.
Oh, wow. So it needs actual data.
Exactly. The mentor is trained to demand this hard environmental proof before allowing the phase transition. It doesn't take the AI's word for it. It demands the receipts.
Okay, so we have an AI mentor successfully demanding concrete evidence. But why does that matter beyond just the code compiling?
Well, it matters a lot when you look at the bigger picture.
Right. Let's talk about the scary stuff. Let's talk about security, compliance, and audits.
The stuff nobody wants to deal with.
Exactly. Specifically things like SOC 2, which is that notoriously brutal security compliance standard that companies have to pass to prove they handle data safely.
What's fascinating here is how FRAIM completely flips the concept of an SOP, or a standard operating procedure, on its head.
How so?
Well, let's be honest about how traditional engineering teams handle SOPs. They are essentially just wikis.
Yeah.
They are text documents sitting on a server somewhere, outlining how things should be done.
And nobody reads the wiki. Let's just be real.
Yeah. Nobody reads the wiki. So when a compliance auditor comes into an office and asks, how do you ensure this specific piece of critical code was reviewed and tested?
Uh-oh.
Yeah, the answer is usually a lot of nervous shuffling.
Hmm.
Eventually, an engineering manager says, well, we have a document that tells the engineers to review it.
Which doesn't prove it actually happened.
Not at all.
Frame fundamentally changes that dynamic because it encodes those SOPs directly into the workflow.
Yes.
The rules aren't on a wiki, they are right in the execution path.
The documents give a really great example regarding database migrations.
Which, for the non-technical listener, is basically when you make a structural change to how your data is stored.
Right. So if an organization has an SOP that says every database migration must have a rollback plan in case it breaks, well, Frame enforces that technically.
During the job itself.
Exactly. During a database migration job, the agent literally cannot bypass the phase without providing both the forward script to make the change and the downward script to undo it.
And crucially, it logs that phase transition, right?
Yeah, it records exactly when the AI provided those scripts, timestamped, with the user ID of the developer who initiated the job.
Okay, here is where I need to push back, though.
Sure.
Because I was reading the data governance section of the audit brief, and I hit something that felt, well, like a contradiction.
Okay, let's hear it.
It says Frame only collects metadata. It records job names, phase transitions, timestamps, success rates, but it explicitly states that it never reads, stores, or transmits source code.
That's right.
No code diffs, meaning the actual changes made to the files. No customer PII, which is personally identifiable information, and no secret API keys.
Zero. The code stays entirely on the engineer's local machine or within their own integrated development environment, their IDE.
Okay, so that's a massive selling point for enterprise security. You aren't beaming your proprietary source code to a third-party dashboard.
It's huge for security.
Right. But if Frame never actually sees my source code, how on earth does it guarantee quality or compliance?
That's the catch, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, how does it know the code the AI wrote isn't complete garbage if it can't even read it?
That is actually the most common misconception about how process auditing works.
Okay, explain it to me.
FRAIM isn't auditing the content of the code. It is enforcing the tools and the gates that ensure quality.
Ah, I see.
Let's go back to a physical world example. Think of a massive factory floor producing car brakes.
Okay.
A process auditor doesn't take every single brake pad off the line and test it themselves. They inspect the machine making the brake pads.
Right. That makes sense.
They verify that calibration is locked in, the sensors are active, and the safety checks are firing.
Oh, wow. So if the machine is perfectly calibrated, the output is guaranteed?
Precisely.
Hmm.
FRAIM records whether the compliance checker skill was run. It records if the seek mentoring gate, which is a mandatory pause for a human to review the work, was triggered and passed.
Oh, that's brilliant.
It verifies that your local test runner actually executed successfully. It guarantees the approved process was followed to the letter, and it produces a cryptographic-style evidence log proving it.
Wow.
So if an auditor asks, how was this reviewed?
Yeah.
You don't point to a dusty wiki. You hand them a structured JSON log that shows the exact millisecond the human review gate was passed.
That is massive. It transforms a vague, trust me workflow into mathematical proof.
Exactly.
But let's shift gears, because a rigid compliance engine sounds fantastic for, a heavily regulated bank.
Sure.
But what if you're a scrappy startup? A founder working out of a garage does not have the same process requirements as a massive enterprise team or an external marketing agency.
Not at all.
How does one platform handle wildly different business models?
It adapts by offering entirely different suites of jobs tailored to the specific life cycle of those businesses.
Okay.
The framework scales to the user's immediate priority.
Let's zero in on the founder guide first, because honestly, this was my favorite part of the stack.
It's really interesting.
Yeah, for founders, the biggest existential risk isn't necessarily writing bad code. It's building the wrong thing entirely and just running out of money.
Exactly.
So Frame has a job specifically for this called customer prospect discovery. And it enforces something called the MOM test during interviews.
Right, the MOM test, which is a legendary startup framework.
Yeah.
It's based on the idea that if you ask your mom if your business idea is good, she'll lie and say yes because she loves you.
Of course she will.
Right. So to get the truth, you have to ask about a customer's past behavior rather than their future intentions.
Give me an example.
Well, if you ask a user, would you pay for this feature? They'll almost always say yes. It's polite. But if you ask, how much did you spend trying to solve this problem last month?
Yeah.
You get reality.
Right. And Frame actually forces the AI to evaluate the quality of the discovery quotes you get from potential customers based on that exact standard.
Yes.
If you feed the AI a generic quote like, yeah, my current software is hard to use, Frame flags it as weak evidence.
It won't accept it.
Right. It demands specific numbers, time frames, and past behaviors. And then, and this is the part that really blew my mind, Frame enforces a Gate 1 decision.
Which is a huge deal for a founder.
It really is. It requires 10 or more deep interviews identifying 3 or more validated pain patterns before the system will even recommend that you proceed to the next phase.
It actively acts as a brake pedal.
Exactly. It stops you from coding.
Which is the ultimate discipline for a founder who usually just wants to build right away.
Yep.
And the platform even splits paths depending on your funding strategy. Like, if you are a bootstrap founder, meaning you are self-funding and need early profitability to survive, Frame pushes you toward jobs like pricing strategy definition.
Okay, that makes sense.
But if you are on the venture path, aiming for institutional capital and hypergrowth, it steers you into founder market fit analysis and investor pitch preparation.
So for founders, Frame acts like a brake pedal, forcing them to validate before they build. But if you're an enterprise engineering manager, you already know what you're building.
Usually, yeah.
Your problem isn't discovery. Your problem is, well, a million lines of legacy code and the fact that changing one thing might break 10 other things.
Exactly.
So how does Frame shift from being a brake pedal to a steering wheel for massive teams?
In the enterprise environment, the focus shifts entirely to scale, rigor, and managing technical debt.
Okay.
You aren't building from scratch. You're operating on a moving train. So An enterprise team relies heavily on jobs like technical design, where vague business specs are formally translated into strict architecture decisions before any code is written.
The sources also talk a lot about pull requests, which, is how developers propose merging their new code into the main project.
Right, and enterprise teams use FRAIM validation jobs, like browser application validation, to ensure that those pull requests are completely systematic.
Systematic. How?
The AI is forced to check the new code against the existing architecture to ensure no regressions occur.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it takes the burden of deep structural code review off the human managers and automates the enforcement of quality standards.
That's huge. And then we have the hired guns, agencies and consultants.
A totally different beast.
Completely. Their world operates on entirely different economics. They sell hours.
And because they sell hours, scope creep is fatal.
Oh, yeah.
If a client asks for a simple website and halfway through demands a complex e-commerce backend, and the agency agrees without updating the contract,
They're toast.
the agency just lost all its profit margin. Exactly.
So for them, FRAIM emphasizes jobs like problem statement crystallization.
That's a mouthful.
It is, but it's brilliant. You run this job the second a client hands you a vague brief. It forces the AI to transform that vague brief into testable, measurable, locked-down objectives before you do a single hour of billable coding.
And then you get the client to sign off on the crystallized statement.
Exactly, and the scope is locked. They also heavily utilize the issue retrospective job.
Right, for after the project.
Yeah, after a project is handed off, the AI captures everything that went wrong and updates the agency's internal playbook so they don't make the same expensive mistakes on the next client.
Which is actually a perfect segue into how this platform changes organizational intelligence.
Let's get into that.
Because regardless of whether you are a founder or an enterprise, FRAIM is doing something fundamentally different than just executing tasks.
Right.
It's replacing scattered individual habits with repeatable delivery paths. But it goes much deeper than that.
Let's explore that depth. We've looked at how individual teams use these jobs day to day to deliver work. But if you are just running these structured jobs over and over in a vacuum, isn't that just a fancy hamster wheel?
It could be, yeah.
So how does a company using FRAIM actually get smarter over time?
It comes down to the difference between L1 and L2 learning.
Okay, break that down for me.
Sure, L1 is individual learning. That's when a single developer realizes they made a mistake and tries not to do it again.
Pretty standard.
But L2 is organizational learning. That's when the entire company gets smarter. Traditional audits usually only find point failures. They find one bug made by one human.
Right.
But because FRAIM is aggregating the metadata of all these processes, it spots systemic patterns.
Oh, the audit brief gives a fantastic example of this.
Yeah, the localization one.
Right. Let's say FRAIM's telemetry notices that over a single month, there were 7 different incidents across 4 different engineers where someone hard-coded an English phrase into the app.
Which breaks the localization for international users.
Exactly. Now, a traditional engineering manager might just yell at those 4 individuals.
Oh, boy.
But FRAIM surfaces this as a systemic process failure in real time.
Exactly. It tells the organization, your developers aren't malicious, your rules are insufficient.
Wow.
It allows you to update the global rule for localization. From that moment on, the AI mentor will never let any agent pass a phase if a hard-coded string is detected.
That's incredible.
It turns compliance from a retroactive punishing exercise into proactive compounding intelligence.
Okay, here is where the sources veer into territory that feels almost, philosophical.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're about to bring up.
Because when things go wrong, FRAIM introduces AI manager jobs.
Yes. AI managing AI.
Which is wild. If an AI agent drifts off course or skips a phase or completely botches a feature implementation, you don't just throw up your hands, delete the code, and start over.
No, you literally run a manager job.
You tell FRAIM to run Follow Your Mentor, which acts like a supervisor wrangling a rogue agent back onto the correct phase.
Right.
Or if the mistake was severe, you run Analyze Why You Messed Up.
I love that title so much.
It's so good.
It forces the AI to create a durable root cause analysis of its own failure.
Which is just crazy to think about. You are treating the algorithm the exact same way you would treat a human junior developer who needs coaching.
Essentially, yes.
You are putting the AI on a performance improvement plan. You don't fire them immediately. You do a post-mortem, figure out where their logic failed, and you update their constraints so they learn from it.
It's a complete paradigm shift. And, for anyone listening who is thinking, okay, this sounds incredibly powerful, but How disruptive is it to actually install?
Always the big question.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, the Quick Start Guide outlines 3 integration modes. They are designed to meet the developer exactly where they already work.
Right, so you don't have to abandon your current tools.
Exactly.
The first is conversational mode. This gives you all the frame guidance and jobs, but without hosting your code or linking to a cloud issue tracker.
It's entirely local, which is great for offline work or ultra-secure environments.
Then you have integrated mode. This is when your code and your project issues live on one single platform, like GitHub or GitLab. Frame just plugs right in.
Nice and simple.
Yeah.
And finally, split mode.
What's that?
This is very common in large enterprises where the code might live in GitLab, but the project management and bug tickets are tracked over in Jira, for example.
Yeah.
So Frame bridges the gap between those 2 platforms. You just pick your mode, initialize the project in your IDE, which is just the software workspace where developers actually write their code, and you start asking the AI to list the Frame jobs.
Okay, so to bring all of these threads together,
Let's do it.
the core value proposition we've uncovered today is that Frame really tames the AI Wild West. We are dealing with a miraculous technology that can generate thousands of lines of code in seconds.
Truly miraculous.
But without structure, that speed is a massive liability. Frame acts as the orchestration layer that turns vague, looks good to me, AI generation into hard, auditable evidence.
It's an indispensable management layer.
Yeah, whether you're a founder desperate to validate an idea before going broke, an agency trying to lock down client scope, or an enterprise trying to survive a brutal compliance audit.
I think the most vital question for anyone listening to ask themselves is this. When you sit down at your keyboard tomorrow to use an AI coding assistant, are you relying entirely on blind trust?
That's a great question.
Or do you have a time-stamped, cryptographically secure evidence trail proving the work was done right according to your organization's standards?
Because the era of trust me, the AI wrote it, is rapidly coming to an end.
It really is. Auditable process is the new standard.
It has to be. And I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over as we wrap up this deep dive. Let's go back to our skyscraper metaphor from the beginning.
Okay.
As AI agents inevitably become more autonomous as we move from AI assisting a human with a single function to AI independently generating entire complex code bases in a matter of seconds, will platforms like Frame become the actual management layer of companies?
Wow.
If the robotic construction crew gets so fast and so autonomous that human hands never actually need to touch a steel beam, will human developers eventually stop managing the code altogether?
That's a wild thought.
Will we simply become the supervisors of the AI's compliance, managing the blueprints and the inspection logs while the machines do all the building?
It completely redefines what it means to be a developer. It shifts the value from writing the code to governing the process.
Exactly. You aren't
Right.
building the skyscraper anymore. You're just making sure the robots have the right permits.
So-
Keep that in mind the next time your AI says, looks good.